Chairman Bouchon, Ranking Member Lipinski, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today in support of the National Science Foundation's FY 2014 budget. I'm Dan Arvizu, Chairman of the National Science Board and Director and Chief Executive of the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And with your concurrence, I submit my written testimony to the record, please. Before I go on with my testimony, I would like to comment on the recent leadership transition here at NSF. Dr. Subra Suresh, who many of you know, an extraordinary leader, will be missed. But I wanted to also acknowledge that Dr. Cora Merritt has more than capably managed a very smooth transition and continues a strong working relationship both with the Board and the NSF senior management. And I've worked closely with Cora now for more than 9 years, and I believe her experience and dedication to the Foundation will serve the nation well. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the 25-member National Science Board and the engineering and science and education communities that we represent, I'd like to thank the members of this subcommittee for their long-standing support of the National Science Foundation. My colleagues on the Board and I do not take this continued support for granted, and our top priority is to provide the strong governance and proper stewardship of this most important taxpayer investment. For over 60 years, NSF has seeded our nation's innovation ecosystem by funding the transformative research that underpins long-term scientific and technological progress. With the support of Congress, NSF has always focused on funding the best science through a rigorous merit review system and by encouraging scientists and engineers to submit their most innovative proposals. Although businesses fund over 60% of total R&D in the U.S., only 5% of that goes to basic research. Here the Federal Government plays a critical, complementary role, accounting for more than half of all the basic research in this country. This is especially true for knowledge and technology-intensive, or KTI, industries that produce 1/4 of the U.S. GDP and employ about 20 million U.S. workers with very high-paying jobs. The NSF 2014 budget request reflects a strategic commitment to supporting the best basic research, economic growth, job creation through innovation, and globally competitive science and engineering workforce. The Board believes that the priorities on this proposal reflect a clear commitment into investments that strengthen our nation for the long term. I would particularly ask for your support for full funding for the NSF's Agency Operating and Award Management account. I note that although the number of proposals received at NSF has increased over 60% in the past decade, the Foundation still replies to roughly 78% of those within the first 6 months of having received them, which exceeds the goals that we've set for ourselves. The proposed increase would help NSF process an increasing number of proposals in the way that protects taxpayer dollars while keeping our overhead rate at the very lean 6% that Dr. Merritt mentioned. I'll refer to you to more details in my written testimony for more of the other things that I'd like to say, but I would like to take this opportunity to briefly comment on the FY 13 continuing resolution. In that bill, the bill restricts the NSF on what it could fund in political science. While NSF and the National Science Board fully will comply with the law, and I would like to understand that is important to all of us, I would like to also raise concerns about how these strictures could undermine the merit review process and the progress of science. Although we recognize that it is Congress's responsibility to set funding priorities, and clearly very attentive to that, the Board is unanimous and believes very strongly that legislatively imposing restrictions on a class of research can run significant risks in not serving the national interest. The Foundation's merit review policies, which are lauded and emulated internationally, hinge on being open to receive the best scientific ideas, having those ideas judged by independent experts, and assessed the soundness and the promise of what is proposed, and making decisions based on potential scientific and societal value. To cut a whole class of science from consideration could have significant unanticipated consequences. For example, when NSF funded Eleanor Ostrom's work, which I know many of you are aware of, on common property, it was not expected that her findings would challenge conventional wisdom. And her research concluded that common resources is sometimes best managed by not regulating them. I think maybe something that we all appreciate. Nor was it anticipated that this political scientist would eventually win the Nobel Prize in economics. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to again thank the subcommittee for their leadership on science and engineering issues. We recognize the fiscal responsibilities confronting the committee and the Congress, and we pledge to work closely with the Director to set priorities. But even in the time of severe constraints, the Board believes that investments in science and technology capabilities, including our S&E workforce, are essential to our nation's long-term prosperity and security. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.